Chapter 4. We searched all night and found nothing. I have something to ask Mr. Zhao. At the Zhao family, the investigation is still going on. ᎢℋᎪNN relies on the fireplace of the local tycoon's pure decoration. The light shone on the father of the missing child. Yesterday afternoon, you were not at home. Where did you go and who did you meet? ᎢℋᎪNN, the father of the missing child Zhao Xiahua, was taken aback. I went to the company. Isn't it? ᎢℋᎪNN interrupted him coldly. Would you like to think about it again? Lu Yi glanced at him and only felt that ᎢℋᎪN's strange tone of yin and yang was especially like a special agent in the TV series, with a little sighing charm. I really went to the company. ᎢℋᎪN seemed to have been tossed all night, frightened and exhausted. While speaking, he rubbed the bridge of his nose forcefully. My secretary can testify, you can ask her to confirm. Secretary. ᎢℋᎪN repeated, inexplicably. The word secretary that came out of his mouth seemed like a curse. Yes, my secretary, Miss Chen. ᎢℋᎪN dug out his phone address book. I have her phone number here. I'm afraid this Miss Chen can't be your witness. ᎢℋᎪN interrupted him bluntly. How to define her personal relationship with you is still up for debate. ᎢℋᎪN's expression changed on the spot. Hearing this, Mrs. Zhao, who was still dying and weak beside her, suddenly resurrected and full of blood, regardless of pretending quail in front of the police. A fierce tiger ape jumped up from the side. Her bleeding red nails showed 9 yin and white bone claws at her husband like thunder and lightning. That's you. That's you. And your shameless fox spirit, you killed my son. Mrs. Zhao is probably a bit too eager to perform, and her frowns and smiles are all exaggerated. At this time, the shrew plays her true character, which is more accurate. ᎢℋᎪN was not good at chasing this crazy woman in front of the police, so he had to dodge and grab Mrs. Zhao's wrist with his hands. What are you crazy about? Are you insane? Mrs. Zhao's eyes were red, and the appearance of the weak and pitiful lady was gone. In the blink of an eye, Mr. Zhao's face was full of blood. In the end, it's another spring of bright purples and reds. Although ᎢℋᎪN was willing to watch the lively family ethics drama from the bottom of his heart, after all, there was a missing child who didn't know whether he was dead or alive. In the end, he can't let the victim's family play the full martial arts in front of him. So he had to cough gently at the policewoman next to him who was stunned. What are you doing? Why haven't you pulled them away yet? The policewoman woke up from a dream, glanced at her boss with disdain, and said in her heart, good things didn't find me. Then, seeing the opportunity, she took a big step forward and took advantage of her female status to hug Mrs. Zhao's waist and drag this crazy woman away. The crazy wife stared with a pair of huge eyes, which were almost separated from her sockets, and she looked astonished. She pointed to Mr. Zhao and shouted, Officer, I don't think you need to investigate. It's my husband's morally corrupt. It's because he wrapped mistresses outside and messed up with men's and women. He must have taken my son away to the little bitch person and let her raise him. You have to get justice for me. ᎢℋᎪN shook his coat in embarrassment and was angry. This is my home, my house, and my son is missing. Why should I abduct my own son in my house? I think you are obviously a villain who sues first. The child plays well in the yard, just under your eyes. It's because you don't have enough supervision that you lost the child. Don't think I don't know what kind of virtues you are. You know how to brush your head all day long. When you see a beautiful man you couldn't walk, you always absent-minded when you see Dr. Wang next door, and not in the mood to take care of the child at all. I can file a lawsuit now, divorce you, and deprive you of custody. Believe it or not. The crazy wife struggled to get out of the control of the policewoman. She bravely wanted to rush over again, play 3 bowls of duty with Mr. Zhao, and then fought for another 300 rounds. Okay. ᎢℋᎪN stopped drinking and interrupted the farce. He turned to ᎢℋᎪN with a stern face. Mr. Zhao, as your wife said. Is your extramarital relationship with your secretary, Miss Chen, really true? ᎢℋᎪNN opened his mouth slowly, his face turned green, red, then blue, respectively, and he finally sat down on the sofa with a sullen face, covering his face with his hands, before nodding his head out of strength. It's just. Lee Yongheo raised his hand to interrupt him, picked up the phone, and quickly dialed his colleague's number. Cha Chenping, go to her house with a search warrant, and after finding someone, ask her to cooperate with the investigation. And take them directly. Come back. In addition, call the property to adjust the video to see if any trace of Chenping has been recorded. ᎢℋᎪNN's shoulders completely collapsed. Mr. Zhao, for the sake of your own son, I hope you can think about it before answering my question. As far as the special relationship between you is concerned, do you think Chenping has a motive to kidnap your son? It was 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Until about 4 o'clock, where are you? Have you been with Chenping all the time? ᎢℋᎪNN didn't say anything, but Mrs. Zhao sneered sharply. You can't say it, can you? Officer Lee, he look like others. In fact, you don't know how dirty he is in private. Do you think he only rapped Chenping? She inserted her pointed fingers into her hair, and ripped off a few of her long hair without any hesitation, and then almost rudely sorted out the messy hair, straightened her chest, and regained her pompous appearance. The whole process is like performing a drama. The emotional switching is ups and downs, which is very joyful. That Chenping is a woman with mental problems. I have bumped into her several times outside the community, all sneaking, but because of the so-called work she occasionally picks up ᎢℋᎪNN. The security guards in the community all know her. If she drives the company car, the security guard will not stop her. It must be her who sneaked in and kidnapped my son. She couldn't wait to do something to our family. I'm cheap, that little bitch goods. There's no door. Is that so, Mr. Zhao? Lee Yongheo's eyes seemed to have substance and fell on ᎢℋᎪNN. ᎢℋᎪNN turned pale all over his face and was silent for a long time before he nodded reluctantly and explained in vain, if it is an improper relationship outside marriage, I admit that Chenping and I may indeed have crossed the boundary, but there is nothing wrong with anyone else in it. Yesterday, I really just temporarily talked to others about something else. I don't want to explain too much, so. Mr. Zhao, I don't think there's anything about work that can't be explained to your wife. Lee Yongheo interrupted him bluntly. Of course our focus is not on this. You only need to answer 2 questions. Yesterday afternoon from 1 to 4 in between, did Chenping ever stay with you? And do you know about her frequent appearances near your house in the past? The point is, did she have any motive to kidnap your son? ᎢℋᎪNN paused, shook his head hesitantly, and then covered his face with his hands. I don't know. I understand. Lee Yongheo took out his phone. From now on, try to find Chenping. Crayfish, let's go. End of chapter 4.